Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon, and I'm one of the co-owners and managing directors with Impetus Digital. Impetus Digital builds some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools for life science and healthcare companies like pharmaceutical, medical device. We've allowed a lot of companies to virtualize their in-person meetings, everything from virtual advisory boards, working groups, medical education, sales rep training, and everything in between. But more importantly, at Impetus Digital, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And then from that conversation comes big, hairy, audacious things. So we like to speak to some of the more provocateurs, the people who are in the bleeding edge technology space, who are doing things that are really different and new, so that we can all collectively work together to positively disrupt healthcare as we know it today. So I'm super excited to have somebody like that at the table today. And this is Rodney Hu. He was actually an MRI technologist. We have something in common actually there. I don't know if you checked out my LinkedIn profile, but he was doing that before, and he's also an entrepreneur. He's on a mission to uncover new opportunities and innovations within the health tech and digital health space. So he's the founder of a company called 209 Digital. So we're going to want to dig into that today. And he partners with all kinds of health tech companies to help simplify their message, connect with their audiences through things like engaging video content, and really likes to highlight the value in the contents of these various companies. He's also the host of not one, but two really, really popular podcasts. So one is called HealthTech Hustle. And in that particular podcast, he aims to provide really valuable content to startups, entrepreneurs, businesses within the health tech community. And a second podcast, which is called Men Street Journal, is a healthcare-based podcast that brings coverage of all kinds of interesting news and current headlines from around the industry on that. So each week, Rodney sits down for conversations with brilliant innovators leading the future of healthcare. So welcome, Rodney. Super excited to have you here.
Hello. Thank you. Appreciate that introduction, man. Make me feel good about myself.
So you're saying that you're a recent convert to Texas from California. So what brought you there? And tell us a little bit about the really interesting trajectory you've had in your career and how you ended up starting 209 Digital.
Yeah, so I actually moved out here to Texas within this last month, I would say. Days has kind of been just blurred together, but yeah, I originally came out here from California, moved out here with my lady. She wanted to be a little closer to family. We just found out that we're expecting. So 2020 has been a crazy year. So it's just one thing after the next, but ended up here in Texas. The grind doesn't stop. I've been working on a lot of things even since I was in California, but I wanted to keep that momentum going. So I wanted to bring that over with me to Texas. So a little bit about my background, though, is I actually got into health tech and digital health a little bit differently than probably most of the people that you talk to. And like you said, my background is in MRI tech, So I went to school to be an MRI tech, went to school out in LA, did my schooling out there for a couple of years. As soon as I graduated, found my first job in Silicon Valley, actually, out in San Jose. And so I was working out there, and that's kind of what first exposed me to healthcare technology. Like MRI is a little bit of healthcare, it's a little bit of technology. And it was interesting to me because how advanced like this technology is and like how valuable it can be. Because if you think about it, like MRI, like it's a super powerful piece of equipment, because you no longer have to doctors don't need to cut into their patients to try to diagnose what's wrong. We could just stick them in a machine for 15 to 20 minutes and pretty much scan their entire body, figuring out what is going on in there without having it be in an invasive way. And so that's kind of what got my gears turning, oh, this is cool. And so I worked in imaging centers. I was also a travel tech. So I worked in hospitals around the country for a little bit. Just being exposed to all the cool technology that's out there. And especially me being a little techie, nerdy guy, I'm always going down rabbit holes all right, what else is out there, man? Because it's most of the time I'm just constrained to the radiology department, but I kind of wanted to see what else is out there. But that's kind of how I got my foot in the door. so to say, for healthcare technology. But what really like cemented my interest in this field is my own patient journey, right? And that's something that you hear with a lot of other entrepreneurs and people doing things in this space is they get into it because of something personal that's happened to them. Like that's kind of what sparked and ignited their interest. And so for me, after I had finished school and I had got a job, I felt like, man, like I'm no longer like driving Uber or delivering pizzas at Pizza Hut. I have like a nice, good paying job, a good career, and I felt on top of the world. And in 2018, I was actually diagnosed with an eye condition known as retinitis pigmentosa. And so, without going too much into it, it's pretty much like a degenerative eye disease in which my vision slowly gets worse and worse over time until supposedly I go legally blind. That's what they say. But like just going through that process, and it started with me just really going in to get my eyes checked for a new glasses prescription. And then I went and seen optometrist. Then I was referred to an ophthalmologist and then referred to a retinal specialist just because they kept finding out new things about my eyes. These tests were coming back with some crazy results. So I just kept getting referred to new people and taking more tests. And like, I'm in the healthcare industry. I work with like advanced technology, but the tests that I was like going through, like I had no idea what that was. And it's like, if you're not in the healthcare industry, you're not interested in it, you're never going to know that these opportunities are out there. And so just going through that process and seeing what's out there and seeing how like helpful like all the doctors and other technologists were in helping me, like I was able to talk to a genetic therapist on the other side of the country who was able to look at my test results. And I was like, man, like this is cool. You have so many moving parts, so many pieces, so many people who are giving their input based off the data that these technologies, these tests are gathering. And so that's kind of what really got me excited about like, man, we're in 2020. Like there's a lot of cool innovations and advancements happening within the healthcare industry. Like I only know about it because I'm interested in it. And I'm always like going down Google rabbit holes trying to figure out what's the next best thing, And after I was diagnosed with my condition, I kind of started going down a deeper rabbit hole. Like, all right, what sort of trials out there? Who's the big names? What are they working on? What companies are doing what? And how can I, like, what content are they creating that I can consume to educate myself, So that's kind of what got my wheels turning on, like, the power of this industry and what got me excited to want to start doing more.
That's fascinating, Rodney, and what a inspirational story. And it really sometimes, this is the thing sometimes I don't think we realize. Right now we're smack dab in the middle of COVID-19 and the world is over and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Social unrest and economic upheaval, and you're right in the middle of a presidential election and everything else you can think of. But just like getting diagnosed with an eye condition, as you have suggested, there sometimes is a silver lining behind it that we oftentimes can't see. And so I'm really kind of curious about your specific patient journey. You were saying that part of this is that you uncovered these really interesting technological opportunities that really opened your eyes, which basically kind of cascaded into a potentially new career. But if you were to step aside to think about patients who may not be as tech savvy as you, and thinking about the array of things. So I'm thinking specifically since COVID. A lot of people are shut down. They're not able to go in physically for an actual physical touch interaction with their physician. And a lot of people are having to rely on technology for their diagnosis, for their management of their eye disease or something, else completely different. What would be some of the advice or mechanisms or things that you would contribute in the days and lives of the regular American, Canadian, whatever, worldwide citizen about being able to navigate and manage their own healthcare condition?
Yeah, that's a good question because when it comes to healthcare, even before this whole COVID pandemic and the world turned upside down, healthcare was already complex and an overwhelming industry to try to tackle and comprehend on your own. And so what really helped me is like after I was diagnosed, first thing I did was go to Google and start searching everything related to retinitis pigmentosa. But in hindsight, I think that probably did more harm than good for me because then you get that whole Google diagnosis, you know. But if I was to give people advice, it would just be to be part of a community. You know, everybody is struggling. Everybody has struggles and obstacles that they go through. But with healthcare and the amount of data that they collect, they're able to kind of categorize, like not everybody isn't like the same person, but kind of categorize people. So like for me, Facebook groups were a big help to me. There's a couple retinitis pigmentosa Facebook groups that I joined, and then just interacting with people, you know, because you're going to have your ups and your downs, your dark days, and feeling like nobody really understands or nobody knows how to help you. But the reality is like that's what the internet's for, is like you no longer have to be confined to just who's in your local area, who's in your local neighborhood or local clinic. Like I've interacted with people locally and I've interacted with people around the world just through engaging with them. And when I was in my dark days personally, after I found out, like talking to the people and just really having that conversation and really understanding like I'm not the only one experiencing whatever it is that I'm experiencing, but I'm aware enough to know that I can't go about handling my problems myself. Who can I talk to? Who can I reach out to? What communities can I join to kind of help uplift me? If that makes sense.
It totally does. And I think that is so brilliantly said. We can really, especially during these dark times of being socially distanced, where we're in these physical, moratoriums, and we can't necessarily get out of lockdown. It's really easy to rely on our solitary, like to just get into the solitary confinement thinking. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't reach out, like you said, to this international audience of other like-minded individuals. So I think that idea of reaching out to community is a huge, huge concept. So you've talked a little bit about some of these open spaces, these Facebook groups and other things. I know that for a fact, a lot of pharmaceutical companies, medical device, biotech, people who might be in the ophthalmology space and other conditions, sometimes they try to create some of these safe cloisters and these communities. In your experience, or not, what do you think that patients feel around these kind of system built, more big pharma types of communities? Do you think that people feel safe? Do you think they feel secure? Do you feel that they trust being in those places? Or do you feel that they ultimately prefer going into their own areas?
I think that pretty much everything you just said, in order to accomplish that, I think what would help with that transition for people who want to achieve all of that, it's on it's the big pharma. It's their obligation to kind of simplify how they are engaging with their audience, you know, because like I said before, like healthcare is super complex. The average person doesn't really understand the normal nuances of healthcare. Even people within the healthcare industry sometimes get overwhelmed if it's outside of their expertise. And so how can you, like the companies, the people, the players in this field, how can we simplify those complex ideas and put out content in a way that's easily digestible for people, you know? Because talking to a lot of like smart people, I've talked to a lot of founders and technologists and physicians and investors, and it's like when they know something and they're an expert on a topic, they can talk about that topic for days. And so if you try to think of a scale on 1 to 10, what these people mostly fall into is the knowledge curse, where they try to take a topic that they know and explain every little thing about it. So they're explaining a topic on like a level 8, 9, or 10, where the average consumer only understands like a 2 or 3. So you have that large gap, that large knowledge gap. And that's really the biggest resistance that I think that companies are facing when they're trying to engage with their community, when they're trying to share a message out with the world, when they're trying to like interact with people that they want to help. Like their intentions are good, their decisions are pure, but maybe their strategy, their delivery of that content, of their message isn't as efficient as it can be. So if you're one of these companies, that's something to think about really, is like, what are you doing now to communicate with them? How much success are you having, and how can you optimize that? How can you improve that? How can you make our target audience more excited to engage with us? So that's what interests me.
So I think that this is a really interesting thing, because one of the things I think in light of COVID-19, COVID-19 in some ways has been an accelerant for technology adoption. Okay. The, the new Apple phones, for example, just got launched and everybody's gobbling them up. And, we're in a tech driven society now. We have to be, because of the lockdowns and of the the social distancing. And there's just been this huge uptake of things like telehealth and all kinds of management of all sorts of conditions using these kinds of technologies. So part of the issue now comes down to the idea of data. We know that data is the new oil, and it's the one thing that is really, really compelling, and it's the one thing that is a limited resource. But even more limited than data is people's attention. So we all are lazy because our brains are energy conservationists. We like to resort to heuristics and to catch-all phrases and to norms and automaticity and behaviors that we already do without even thinking, because it saves time and energy and money. So we have intrinsic bias. We do things that we believe. We get out of cognitive dissonance because we like to go into things that make us feel comfortable. And as soon as you start to put us on the edge or doing something that feels abnormal, we kind of stay away from it. And that includes everybody across the knowledge echelon: physicians, PhDs, right to somebody who just got diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we as communicators have to be aware of is, how do we gain attention? Attention is the major limited resource. Everybody is hitting us up from everything. This email, being pinged on WhatsApp, this thing, that thing, LinkedIn, like every social media thing you can imagine, and everybody wants your attention. So what is the message? How are people opening themselves up as a patient, as an example, to hear those messages, and then for these people with really, really important messages to be able to get those across to those individuals?
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. Attention. That's really, even when not in healthcare, the whole how we are in this day and age in 2020, it's all attention. Everyone's always on their phone, always on their computer, always dialed in to some sort of technology, right? The average attention span is only like what, 3 to 4 seconds. Like that's like a TikTok pretty much. So people, and it's crazy, like who like grows their audience, their influence because of attention, even if it's not that doctor or teacher or somebody who actually has a powerful message. And it could just be someone doing something dumb on the internet for attention or clout, what they call it. And those people actually get attention. People entertain those ideas. But I think what can change the game is, how can we take that attention and bring it towards the industry? And so like, there's really no concrete answer, but I guess what you can do is focus on educating the market, right? But if you do it in the old school ways, you're gonna get old school results. Really, like there's no way around it. And so you have to kind of look from a very macro view of kind of what's working on the internet, and what are the successful people who are getting attention? How are they doing that? And then how can we take those concepts and those principles and reapply them to our industry? And for example, like I see some like doctors and healthcare influencers already trying to do this, whether it's creating a YouTube channel and not even trying to sell their service. Like if you're what are those people who like crack backs and stuff like that? Chiropractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I drew a blank. But if you're a chiropractor, you don't want to go out there and just like try to sell your services. But if you look up like videos of chiropractors doing like pops and cracks and adjustments and stuff like that, those videos have like thousands of views. So it's like you're not selling nothing, but you're just creating interesting content for like your market. So I think that it really comes down to understanding your market. Are you marketing to athletes? Are you marketing to the older population? Are you marketing or trying to connect with mothers who have newborns within the last 6 months? Like with the amount of data that we have and the amount of technology that's available in this day and age, like you can segment your audience like that. And then from there, you can start to figure out, all right, what's their pains? What's their problems? What is their desires? What are they trying to get away from? And what are they trying to move towards? And so once you can understand your market, like your ideal customer avatar on that level, then everything else kind of just falls into place. Like, okay, they don't even read books. They listen to podcasts. So let's not entertain books. Let's make a podcast. Or they don't even listen to podcasts. They do like group coaching once a week or something, like a community group once a week. So how can we get in front of them in that way? And so then that's when the gears start turning. As like a creator and an innovator, you're like, okay, now let's start having fun with this. And then that's when you start throwing things out into the market, start testing things. This works, this doesn't work. This works, so let's keep on optimizing this process, And then one turns into two, two turns into four, four turns into 16, and so on and so on. But it's really understanding from a foundational level, like who is it that you're trying to target and how can we go about connecting with them?
I love that you brought up some so pivotal concepts there, Rodney, including the whole idea around customer avatar, really understanding who your customer is, and that it has to be uber specialized and niched. No longer are we going after the entire echelon of the human race.
Yeah.
So I think target segmentation is a huge concept, and I want to linger on that a little bit. But also your idea about being able to be nimble and agile and pivoting and quickly changing what we're doing, and that requires a certain kind of culture, mindset, and infrastructure to be able to do this. So let's actually just play with this idea for a second and think, if the company was coming to you, let's just say the company is Government X, and they want to solve the issue that we have right now around COVID-19 and the fact that there's a whole cohort of young people aged 19 to 35 who are contracting COVID-19 and not listening to any of these old school monotone physicians telling them that they should stay home and not go to the bars, right? So tell us a little bit, and again, this would be some of the way that you use the strategy at your company, 209 Digital. What would be some of the cool hip things that you would discuss to this company around, one, how do they find out and really learn as much as they can about that cohort? And two, what would be some of the ways that they'd want to get their messages across that are obviously not working today?
Ooh, this is gonna be a fun one. So yeah, pretty much at the basis of it, it's really understanding who you are as a company and what your goal is, right? So if you can understand your goal, you can set a target. If you can set a target, you can reverse engineer the process of achieving that goal. And I'm a big proponent of not reinventing the wheel. You don't have to, because if you are trying to do something and someone's already done it, they have the arrows in their back already. So you don't have to try to go out there and try something and you get the arrows in your back. Just follow the people that have went down the path that you're trying to go to. Maybe they connect with an audience you're already trying to connect with, or maybe they've created a system, a process that gets them a result that you're trying to get. So what I would do is start with first laying that foundation of your goals and where you're at, where you want to be, and kind of reverse engineering how to get there, but then really not reinventing the wheel. Go in and find people who have what you want and model after what they're doing. So not necessarily copying them, but modeling them. You want to be the best basketball player, you're going to study someone like Michael Jordan, LeBron James. You want to be the best golfer, you're going to study Tiger Woods. And if you want to be the best X, you're going to study somebody who has whatever you want. So it's like, okay, this company has a lot of engagement on their social media. Then you go back, okay, what are they doing? Where are they active? Oh, they're active on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. They're posting X amount of times a day. What kind of content are they posting? Oh, they're posting like questions, they're posting polls. Um, they may post a video and that video gets a lot more engagement than a text post. So he's like, okay, maybe I'll stick to video. Like video is way more engaging than just a standard text or image. And so you can start to reverse engineer and just pick out the things, little bits and pieces that you see other companies doing. And if it's a big pharma company or any sort of big healthcare company, they have the budgets and the teams and the infrastructure to go out and rapidly test it. So if you're a startup, like a lot of the people I talk to is like, just go see what they're doing to connect with the people that you want to connect with, and just figure out what they're doing and model after it. See where their traffic's coming from, how are they attracting people, how are they bringing awareness, and then how are they converting them? What is that conversion to them? Is it to join a group? Is it to get on a call? Like, that's why I'm saying it all depends on like what your goal is as a company. So really understanding your goals, understanding your numbers, and like laying out each step of the process. Like, that's how you can go about it. And if you follow that framework, that structure, like it really doesn't matter like what company you are. Really, it's like that's how you use the internet to kind of help drive results for you.
Amazing. So one of the things that you do obviously do well, and you have a couple, is you have healthcare podcasts. Tell us a little bit about why you started these. Is this part of your marketing strategy? Tell us some of the rationale behind it and what has worked for you and what hasn't.
Yeah, so definitely. So before I get into it, I have to take like a step back and kind of explain how I even got into the whole online space, because like I said, my background was MRI. So that's what I went to school for. That's what I know. So everything that I'm learning and going to talk about is pretty much self-taught to myself through trial and error and through studying from other people. Like I'm just telling you, like I'm a product of what I'm talking about. And so after I graduated school and I was working, I was like, man, like I have this source of income. I want to create another source of income. I seen the power, the value of the internet, and hear stories about people making money online and whatnot. And so I wanted to somehow figure out how I can get my foot in the door and do this as well. And so I started out creating video content, animated explainer videos for companies. And in the beginning, it wasn't just healthcare companies. It was anybody who was going to pay me, to be completely honest with you. So I was doing that just so I could um, optimize my team, optimize my processes, and be able to prove to myself and the market that I can produce quality, right? So then as I'm learning more and more, I'm learning that people are telling you to niche down, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, and what do I have experience in? What am I already interested in? And that's kind of how I came back to the healthcare technology industry. And I was like, okay, like how can I connect to these people? So I would reach out to people and be like, hey, I'd love to learn about your company, blah, blah, blah. No response, like no engagement. Like I'm nobody technically. Like if you want to be real and transparent about it, like I'm an MRI tech. I'm not a video creator in their eyes. And so how can I create that like authority, that influence to get people to want to collaborate with me, to want to talk to me, right? So what do I have to do? And so I started doing more research and started understanding like the power of a platform, right? You have all these like big name YouTubers and stuff or whatnot, but they have a platform that allows them to share their message and share their vision of what they want to do. And so for me, I wanted to really understand this market, understand the digital health industry and how people are going about like having success, like growing the business. So that's how I came up with my podcast, Health Tech Hustle. And the whole goal behind that was to pick the minds, pick the brains of the brilliant people who are actually striving to push the needle in this healthcare industry, who are trying to disrupt the market and whatnot, and just really figure out their strategy, their tools, the teams, the tactics that they use, and what's really on their minds when it comes to growing a company. Because I like what I'm learning now is like it's not just about the products and services that you offer, but it's really the product, the problems and the results that you get, the problems you solve and the results you can get. So then by starting this podcast and just talking to people and using my platform to do this, like I'm able to learn so much more about the market and what people are really interested in. And so that's kind of how I've been starting to pivot instead of just video content, but how can I solve a problem for them as a whole, a holistic point of view. So that's kind of like how what led me to starting the podcast.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I love the fact that you're sort of the self-made entrepreneur. You started off with a vision, and you just kept asking the smart questions: what if, and how can, and why not me? And I loved also how the story starts with you initiating in the healthcare journey as a patient, as somebody with a healthcare condition, and how you have navigated through your own trajectory through through the healing process to get to where you are today. So with some of these really great health tech entrepreneurs, et cetera, I'm sure you could probably relate to their story. Many of them probably don't have a background in health. They probably are techies and maybe not even that. So with some of these people that you're speaking to, what are you finding or defining in general is some of the key concepts or issues or challenges that these people are trying to collectively try to solve in healthcare right now? If you were to cherry pick some of the core ideas, what would those be that you've been hearing in your conversations?
Well, that's a good question. So just kind of relate back to what you're saying on like other companies who kind of started because of their own personal like experiences. Like there's a couple of companies to me that kind of stick out. For example, there's one, I don't want to drop names because it's kind of a sensitive topic, but they started a company because one of the founders had experience around sexual assault, right? Something bad has happened. So she was like, man, like this happened to me. I don't want this to happen to anybody else. Who can I connect with that's already trying to solve this problem? And I guess they did their due diligence, did their research, and nothing really satisfied them. That's a common thing that I'm noticing is that when people have these experiences, they're going in to try to see who's already working on this and like how they can collaborate with them. But if nothing is satisfying them in their research process, these are smart enough people to be like, all right, here's a problem. I'm just going to go ahead and figure it out. And then they just take action, you know, and that's really the important part is taking action, because from there, like one thing leads to another, one conversation leads to another conversation, which leads to an opportunity. So it really just starts with that. Just what problem can you solve? Like we're going back to that, like what problem can you solve and how can we go about doing that? And then just taking action and doing it.
So these people that you're meeting in your podcast, obviously it's engaging them in the conversation. It's pulling out and learning about content, finding out what matters in the industry and getting some of these really good crunchy topics. Has any of these startups or entrepreneurs then looked to you in your company 209 Digital to start working with you? Has this become a pipeline, if you will, of potential candidates or our customers for you? Is this how it's been working for you?
Yeah, so that's the craziest part, because like I originally started this for myself so that I can self-educate and learn about the market, but at the same time talk to the smart people and be able to provide them a platform because that's valuable to them. But a hidden benefit that I've started to see is like I've been getting more opportunities for my business, more opportunities for my personal brand, like being interviewed on other podcasts like this, or being invited to speak at a digital health growth summit here in a couple weeks. And like none of that would have been possible without just having this conversation. That's why I'm big on like, if you have a problem you can solve, you have every obligation to have to go out there and try to find and connect with the right people to help actually take that idea and turn it into reality, because like this all just started from me saying, hey, this is who I am, this is who you are, can I pick your brain so I could like see how your mind works and how I could be of value. That's really all it comes down to. How can I be of value to you? And from there, like, we form relationships because I'm interviewing people for 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on how long an episode goes. And from there, it's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Like, what do we do? We just stop? Like, no. Like, if some people are like, hey, man, I really like how you reached out to me for this podcast, or I like how smooth it was from the time I scheduled to actually getting on, and you're helping like publish it as well. Like, I wanted to duplicate that as well. And he was like, okay, here's what I'm doing. And like, oh, how much is this? Like, nah, these are just the, what I would do is just send people like the Google Docs that I use and fill out, and just like, here, just replace my stuff with your stuff and do it. Let me know how it works. And usually that's what they do. And that's what kind of nurtures that relationship. That's what like a B2B relationship is. It's all about giving value. Because then when somebody does need a video, they'll be like, hey, I have a project I'm working on. Can I get your advice, or can I bring you on for this? And so that's kind of what's been happening for me. And so like I said in the beginning, I started selling videos, but now like I'm more focused on how we could leverage the internet so that people can maximize their message and increase their exposure, kind of like what I'm doing. Like, I literally started with zero, and now I'm sitting here having a conversation with you. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the power of it, really.
It is so cool. And one of the things I think that you described so eloquently there, Rodney, was that you are building these really authentic relationships with people by just giving. So in some ways, it seems counterintuitive. We call that freeonomics, where you're giving away knowledge for free. So it's in some ways, if you think about when people give software for free, or you can try their things for free, it's giving it for free. We're using Google for free, but at the end of the day, there's a relationship being developed, and there's a trust because of the authenticity and the way and the methodology in which you shared it, which was, here, man, here's what you can have. And if you come back to me at some point, that's just terrific. And so there's like an honesty there that people feel that trustability. And I think a lot of big companies could really learn from what you just shared there. And I do think it's really important stuff. So I think a really important question. So you're coming into this as a patient who transformed their life, who, transformed through their healthcare trajectory. They're starting to do their own thing. Do you believe that technology is going to help to democratize how people like yourself can make a living? That no longer you need to be an MRI tech or work somewhere else, that you can actually, create these relationships and do this work. Do you see this changing the environment and into more of what we call a gig economy?
Oh yeah, definitely. And honestly, I think that process has already begun. Like, you see the amount of people, like, most people, like, they hear the YouTube sensations, like those people who got rich off of people watching their content a million times. But like, for 99% of people, like, usually that's not the road that you go down. And so for me, it's really just, how can you make yourself of value to the market? And in order to be of value, you have to know what problems that market is experiencing and how to go about solving those problems. So like, first, like, it's a whole process, right? You don't just jump in, leave your day job and jump into this whole idea of a gig economy and say, hey, I'm gonna make it rich this way because other people have done it. Kind of complicated if you want to go that way. If you just really sit back and be like, okay, here's the market, here's the problem that they're experiencing, here's the result that they want to get, here is how to solve that problem, here's the skills that are needed in order to solve that problem. And so then after you get all that figured out, you go back and self-reflect on yourself, like, okay, do I have these skills? Do I know about pay-per-click? Do I know about SEO? Do I know about social media? Do I know about X, Y, and Z? Like, that's when you start getting into the details. And then if you don't, it's like, all right, what am I good at? What am I bad at? Like, if I'm good at this, how can I just focus on this? If I'm not good at it and it's more of a weakness, like, do I study to build that up, or do I find a team, or like, do I just outsource that? And that's when you start going down that part of the process. But it's really just understanding the entire problem. like I go back to saying, because that's what I feel like a lot of people don't focus on. A lot of people focus on, hey, like I went down and I had this personal experience, and so I created a cool product. I created a cool service. Now, how can I go and sell this? Like, you can have the coolest product, you can have the coolest service, but like if it's not valuable to the people who you want to help, and if it that message doesn't resonate with them, like I feel like you just wasted time. So like for me, it's like I'm not out here like just selling and trying to like brand myself as that, because I know like the part of the process that I'm in right now, and every little move I'm making is intentional on how I could better serve the overall community. That
Yeah,
makes
and it
sense.
really shows through. And I really love the model that you created, Rodney, because I think that big pharma, biotech, medical device, healthcare companies could really take some really core lessons and ideas from this. And that is potentially patients teaching other patients and developing these authentic relationships in very unique ways and leveraging platforms like yourself to be able to amplify authentic messages about services, products, things that they can do for their own healthcare, in a very like honest way. So I love this platform as a model for, patient to patient, uh, you know, branding, for interaction, for a community. And so I think that there is something to be said on that note around leveraging platforms like yourself, for example, pharma companies, to be able to reach out to specific audiences, in a way that they may not be able to as authentically, or not be able to relate as much, right? It's sort of like in some ways like maybe a child relating to their to an older person in their family, and maybe they're just not talking in the same way. And so by leveraging a platform like yours and speaking to an audience that really relates to your style, is that you'd be able to open. So there's a real interesting opportunity of leveraging platforms like yourself. So
Right.
one question I do have for you is around COVID-19, and what we oftentimes hear is the digital divide. So technologies can be the greatest democratizer and allowing lots of conversations and communities to take place. But what about the individuals who don't have the technology, or it's in and out for them, or they live in certain districts where they don't have the internet or anything that's consistent? What do you have to say about that? Is that just the way it is? Is there a solve? We're already starting to hear about people talk about 5G, let alone individuals who don't even have a cell phone. What do you have to say about the digital divide?
Ooh, shoot, that's a tough one, really. Just because, like, I'm aware that there's people outside of the U.S. Like, I'm located in the U.S., so everywhere I go, I have pretty good Wi-Fi. I have pretty good like LTE, but I'm also like aware that there are other other countries really who don't have the same like necessities and that and stuff that we have. And you already mentioned like 5G, and like there's some companies working on like low field satellites so that Wi-Fi can be available to a more wider audience. But I'd say just follow like find the people who are already doing that and see how you can complement them rather than compete with them, because I think that's like the biggest thing with technology in general and its divide, is that people think technology is going to compete with their current lifestyle. But the mindset that you should have is that technology should complement your current lifestyle. And so if there's somebody like an older population in a third world country who has no idea how to use the internet or what the internet is, but they still need care. So then you go back to thinking of who are the people that can help them. And is it the techs? Is it the like physicians? And who who are working on those projects already, and how can we collaborate? Because I think two minds are better than one, four minds are better than two. So how can we figure out and collaborate with the right people to reach those like underserved populations, no matter where they're at? And so technology is always going to be kind of like available to those who can afford it. But if you have the luxury, it's your obligation to try to help as many people as you can, if that makes sense. I'm all
Absolutely.
about providing value pretty much, and how reverse engineering how you can go about doing that. Because like the way that you're going to do it to that market is going to be different than how you would help another market. So it all goes back to reverse engineering from the problem, and then figuring out the steps and the processes, the team that needs to be in place in order to tackle those problems.
I think it's brilliant, Rodney, and you've actually cracked the nut on some of the biggest thinkers in the world that have changed the world. So when you're talking about going back to basics or first principles, it's absolutely the dynamic of what Elon Musk talks about, and being absolutely focused and obsessed on the customer and providing value is absolutely the value proposition of Amazon. So amazing mentality and thinking there. So this has been absolutely an outstanding conversation. Super proud of what you've done, and an amazing journey, both as a patient and as an entrepreneur and somebody who's really building a platform. Super excited to see about what is going to be transpiring in your life moving forward. So for those of you who are interested, we'll be leaving a link for Rodney's LinkedIn as well as his website. If anybody wants to check it out and potentially connect, I think there's lots of interesting opportunities there. For those other people who want to actually speak with Impetus, as I was mentioning, we actually have the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration tools so that you can actually have some of these ongoing conversations with patients and different groups and different communities from across the globe on a variety of different topics, issues, journeys, etc. So we'd love to actually have a chat with you. So please feel free to subscribe to our channel. Please like us. This actually helps with the algorithm so more people can find our YouTube as well as our podcast. And we'd love to hear from you as well. So thank you so much for checking in today. It has been an absolute pleasure meeting with you, Rodney, and wishing everybody a wonderful day ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I had fun. I hope I was able to provide value to your audience and just kind of share my story, because everybody's story can impact somebody else. And I feel like if you found it valuable, then maybe 1, 2, 3, 100 other people may find it valuable. And so it's our duty, it's our obligation to create the valuable content and get it out to people that we want to help serve. And so I just want to thank you for allowing me to use your platform to really share my message.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Rodney, and have a great day ahead.